Hello.
Hello.
Hello out there. Welcome to Tissue Talk.
Hi, everybody.
Episode 4. Hey, while we're waiting for some people to jump in, if you guys are totally interested, happy Quarantine Wednesday. We're still here. And today we're talking about
and that's on this couch
pain.
since last week.
Oh my God, we haven't moved.
Right here.
It's that's why our backs hurt
Why
so
move?
much. So listen, while we were waiting for anybody to jump in and get started, if this is something that you guys feel like your friends need, please tag them. We're just trying to get this thing up and running, and we want as many people to watch it as possible. And if you feel like you're getting some kind of information or some kind of something out of it, feel free to tag somebody, invite them into Tissue Talk. We really love to be able to share what we have with everyone.
Absolutely.
And then down the line, we really are interested in doing some more stuff. So I'm going to keep it like that for right now.
We got things coming up.
We got some good stuff coming up. This is just starting the process. So, okay, let's just jump in and get it.
Jump on in.
So today we are talking about posterior tilt. What the hell is it? And why do we need it?
Low back stuff.
Well, low back, but yes, low back pain. And that's why posterior tilt is something that all of us have heard, at least if you've gone to any kind of PT, if you've gone and any type of back issue whatsoever. It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword.
Some of you may have just experienced maybe a little bit of low back pain. Some people have never had low back pain, and it's amazing to me because I've had some experience with low back pain since I was about 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And only up till within the last few years, I've actually been able to get out of low back pain completely.
Yeah. And if you're like me, you are tired of sitting on the couch and laying around. I have sat more in the last month than I think I've sat.
Sitting. It's
I
the
mean,
devil.
sitting. It's horrible. And your hips and back, I know they're talking to me right now. They're like, they have conversations with me daily.
Yeah.
Daily. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk low back pain today. And instead of discussing about what all of the possibilities might lead to low back pain, what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about the anatomy and the muscle structure of postures that contribute to it, right? Because it's really, really important that we understand everything that goes on around that pelvis.
I think there's a big misunderstanding, or not misunderstanding, but for people who go to see someone, they have things going on with their body, and they go in to see someone helps them to get it better, and then they move on, not truly having an understanding of their body. We have these amazing things that we're in all day long, yet do we actually understand anything about them?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I've witnessed a lot of people taking it for granted. Not saying that you do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who take this for granted. I know I have taken it for granted. And you don't really truly respect it, for me, until you experience pain.
Right.
When you experience pain, you now all of a sudden acutely aware that this structure or this thing is vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we get to fix it. And we can show you some interesting things about your body, teach you about that, and then some ways to help it.
Yeah, and it really is. There's nothing worse than going through the pain, going to see somebody for the pain, getting out of the pain temporarily, and then having to come right back because you weren't really taught the right way to address it so that the pain stays away or at least drops down.
What's happening, and then why is it happening, and then why are you doing the things you're doing to get you out of that?
Right. So today we're going to start by talking about posterior tilt. Okay, you have to get into posterior tilt. Everybody's in posterior tilt. You don't have enough posterior tilt. What in the hell does posterior tilt mean? What does it mean?
Julie,
okay.
Please tell me.
Okay, first, we're going to start with the anatomy of the pelvis because it really starts in the pelvis, right? The pelvis. Yeah. Hey, we brought a friend today. I hope you guys are happy about that. So the pelvis is the thing that makes up your low back and your hip area of your body. So that's why it's called the pelvic girdle. Hi, Alan. I'm so happy that you're watching. So jump on that. So here is the bony parts that make up the pelvis. So you've got the two bones right here, right? So you've got these two big ilium bones, and then actually these are all fused. So you have your pubis and your ischium and your ilium, and they actually form and fuse together to make this big bone. And then in the back side, you've got your sacrum, which are all the little vertebrae that are fused together. And then you've got this little coccyx, which is your tailbone, which a lot of us actually bend, break, or
fall down
on. That's where you hit your tailbone. That's what hurts, and it moves a lot. So this is your sacrum, this is your ilium, right? So when we're going to do this, where the ilium and the sacrum meet, right in here, is called your SI joint. How many of you guys have heard SI joint? I mean, it's a pretty popular term, but how many of you guys actually know where the SI joint is?
Do you?
I mean, for a lot of people, they have no idea. They're just talking about SI joint is like, my SI joint hurts. And I'm like, that's not your joint. A joint, remember, is where two bones connect, and it's connected by ligaments that hold it together. So you have your ilium and your sacrum. Inside here is your SI joint. Here's the cool part. Your pelvis, hold on.
I got it.
Your pelvis, when you're supposed to be doing it, the movement of the pelvis is it's supposed to be able to rotate back and forth, and then also going superior and inferior. So it's supposed to be going up and down and back and forth. And if it's doing it correctly, that means we have efficient movement, right? That's really, really, really important.
And you should be pain free.
Right. So we have the SI joint, but where do we always feel the pain? These two little bumps right back here, these are the dimples on the base of your back. So you have these little spots when you pull right down below your hips, you have these little bumps right here.
Should I show mine right now?
Oh God, I don't know if we're ready for all of that.
Pay-per-view only.
Truthfully, I don't know. But so these little bumps right here, that is called your posterior superior iliac spine. It's the posterior bump of your bone. That's like where your SI joint, that's where most people check for your SI joint. And a lot of times when you're hurting, one is sitting up high or one is sitting forward or rotated. And when these are off, this gets to be a little bit painful. Okay, so you have the back side, you have your sacrum, you have your ilium, you have your PSIS, and then you have these backside of your hip bones. And this is going to come into play a little bit later in the muscle structure, but there's a lot of stuff that attaches to these guys on the hips. This is when you put your hands on the backside of your butt on the very top, you can feel the top of your hip bones right at the bottom of your waist. So this is called your iliac crest, okay? And it's the top part of your pelvis. So you have the bones on the side, and then if we flip this over, these are the pokey parts that most people feel on their hip bones in the front. So this is your anterior side, so it's the anterior superior iliac spine. And the reason why we're talking about these guys is that this is where a lot of the muscles come in and attach. So we have all of these muscles that attach from the front, in the side, in the back, and that's what allows the pelvis to move the way it does, right? So again, if you're doing lunges, if you're doing walking, if you're doing reaching down and picking something up, if you're picking toys up off the floor, you need this pelvis to move a little bit. And if it doesn't, all of the rest of this gets to go into pain pattern, and we don't want that. So turning this guy back around, right? Here's the sacrum, here's coccyx, this is your SI joint. Look at what's attached into it are your lumbar vertebrae. Now the way that the spine works is it's actually, as it's going in and the body is meant to take up impact, right? This guy's got a little bit of a hunchback going on, so apologize. But you have a little bit of a what's called a lordotic curve here. You have that kyphotic curve here. On teenagers, it actually looks like this.
My son.
For all of you guys playing video games all the time or texting. Yes, well, Abdul, I like it. So I'm not liking you have pain, but you are in luck today. So then it comes down here and then it goes into this little lumbar lordotic curve like this. That's so me. This is where most of us are sitting, right? So if you notice, it's got a natural curve here, even with the pelvis in neutral. But for most of us, we're sitting more like this. And so these lumbar vertebrae, if you notice these little yellow things that are coming out, are your nerves. And so what will happen is as these muscles start to contract, they start to kind of pinch these nerves off and we get a little bit of pain down in here, right? And then what they also do is they squish these little discs that are sitting down there waiting for a lot of impact and compression. And so if we're off our posture all the time, it's putting a lot of pressure in places that shouldn't be pressure.
Some of us know that pressure way too well.
Right.
Too familiar.
Right. So I'm going to hold that. So we have a ton of muscles that attach to all the parts of the body, right? Hi, Shay. And so it's like a super highway of movement. Like we are moving back and forth. We are not two-dimensional. We don't just go forward and back. Right. We are curving around. We're intertwining each other. We're doing linear movements. We're doing lateral movements. We've got everything working. And it's just, the body is fascinating how it works, right? So, and bones don't move on their own. Like this guy, he's not moving. I mean, he's fake bone, but he's still not going to move, right? Because what makes bones move?
It's missing all the things that will make it move.
Right.
And keep it all together.
Right, which is the muscle. Muscles pull bones. The bones rotate around the joint, and then it pulls up, and then that's how we move. Yeah. It's really, and we need to know that, because in order for this to happen, well, there's nerves in there too, but that's a whole nother class. Good, I like the thumbs up on that one. It's really important to know, right? So as we're working, and as we're sitting, and as we're laying, and as we're doing computer work, and as we're hunched over, and we're sitting for like, I sat for 8.5 hours on Sunday.
What?
Seriously, like sat setting up a curriculum for something else. It's ridiculous. My butt was killing me by the end of the day. The muscles and the pelvis and thigh that attach up in there, they're there to create movement of the hip and the knee joint. So you've got all these muscles that attach into the pelvis, right? Up and into the low back. You've got the big glutes, you've got the thighs, you've got the quads, you've got the adductors, you've got the hamstrings, and they're all attached, but they're there to create movement of the hip and the thigh, or the hip and the knee. So why does the back hurt? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Why does the back hurt when everything is creating movement from something completely different?
Especially if you haven't been in a car accident, you haven't fallen down, you haven't done anything to necessarily hurt yourself.
Right.
But now you wake up. The big one is, I woke up and I was in pain. I did nothing.
Yeah.
I woke up in pain.
Yeah, for sure.
Why? Why did that? Because that's really what we're talking about here. Not somebody who's had an accident, but someone who's actually in pain.
Right. Well, and here's the deal, you guys. All of those muscles, they all attach back into the pelvis and makes the pelvis move forward and back and up and down and rotate and torsion and all that good stuff. So all of the muscles that we're using, overusing, underusing are attaching back in, and then the pelvis is being pulled all over the place from that.
We are generating, just by sitting here right now, we are generating an imbalance.
Totally.
Through this whole
I mean, it's exactly what's happening, right? So let's go to the muscles in the front of the thigh.
Let's do that.
So the front of the thigh, you have your big quadricep muscles. That's the thigh muscles that we have on the front of the leg, right? They come up and they attach like up into here. One of them attaches right into here. We've got adductors, which allow the legs to go in and out, which kind of hold the leg onto the body. And these guys all attach like up into this area. Mm-hmm. If we're looking at the back side, we have big hip flexors. We've got this big psoas that attaches down in here, and the TFL, which is another hip flexor that allows the knee to come up and rotate in. That attaches right there. And if we turn this guy back around, we got these big hamstrings that are attached here, back into the back side of the pelvis.
What do the hamstrings typically do? What are they, and even in just normal function, how are they? They're normally pretty tight in general.
They're normally taut, not tight.
Okay.
So taut is different than tight because if the hamstrings are attached here, you guys, and this is a neutral space, and let me take this.
Yep.
And I'm taking the pelvis and I'm rotating it like this. Give me an answer. There we go. I put these on stretch. Mm-hmm. So remember, your hamstrings are now feeling really, really tight, but they're not. They're stretched out and they're not getting the contraction that they need to feel normal again. So they feel overly tight, and then we tend to do that where we stretch them again. And then as we're stretching them, we're really just elongating we're putting fuel on the fire, right? So we're stretching something that's already been stretched. Thank you for that heart. I love it. Stretching something that's already been stretched, and we have to put it back into neutral.
So then, if those are stretched long and tight, What's then is stretched short and tight? In this dysfunctional scenario we're talking about right now, what would be short and tight?
Short and tight would be your hips.
'Cause the back is
Anything
long and tight.
that hits into your quads, those thighs that we have. We have one muscle in our quadriceps that attaches into your pelvis, and it's called your rectus femoris, and it's a hip flexor. So when they're really tight, what they're doing is they're pulling that pelvis forward. So there's an imbalance that happens. So, but here's what I want to do. I want to talk about two muscles specifically today, because I can spend all day talking about everything.
This is leadership burning.
I can spend all day. I'm such a goob. But today we're talking about psoas, and we're talking about QL and quadratus lumborum. And here's why I want to talk about these two guys. Psoas, I think a lot of people have heard of psoas, but I think people don't have any idea who psoas is and where it lives
Or how
and
to spell
what
it.
it does. And yeah, I know when I was learning how to spell it, I said I had to spell Iliopsoas because I knew there was a P in there somewhere, and I had to make sure there was a.
Iliopsoas, yep.
So the psoas is really called your iliopsoas. It's your psoas major and your iliacus. And the iliacus is where the bone runs through, right? It's attaches to the bodies and the processes of the lower lumbar.
Not only that, and what I've been aware of is it actually interweaves with the disc themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the bony structures, it's interweaving with those discs.
Yeah.
So you think about that muscle starts to pull tight. Where is it pulling on?
Yeah. So that it attaches right into these guys of all of your lower lumbar vertebrae. It comes through, it attaches into the pelvis. Mm-hmm. Like it's sitting into this little fossa right here. And then it winds itself down through and hits on the upper part of the of the leg. Right. So your quadricep, your thigh, your femur, whatever you want to call it, your leg bone, it's sitting into your leg. So every time you raise and lower your leg, that's the muscle that's pulling that guy up.
Okay, big player, yeah.
So, and secondly, with this psoas, if the leg is standing, that's when the back starts to move or the pelvis starts to move. And so if the leg is fixed, it's going to pull the pelvis down. So if we're doing a lot of sitting all day, every day, multiple times a day, too much a day, all that good stuff. This is sitting like super, super tight and short. And it's not getting the love that is needed, right? So that's the front side. On the back side, attached to this guy, which is the iliac crest, and attached to the lower lumbar right here, like this, is your quadratus lumborum.
QL.
So the QL are on both sides of this back. And it's really, people think it's your back, one of your back muscles. It's actually really just a posterior abdominal muscle. It's like the most posterior abdominal muscle that you have. Super cool. But you have psoas on this side, QL on this side. So, sorry. So you have a tug of war going on all the time. If this is tight, this side's going to be tight because this side's going to be short and tight. This is going to be short and weak.
Long.
Right?
Should it be long? It depends. It might
No,
be
it'll
long.
be tight because
Okay.
this side is tightening up and then this side shortens.
Okay.
Because remember, the QL's job is to stabilize the pelvis amongst other things.
Well, here's the question. If you have one side that's short, you will have the inverse side.
Right, right. That's only when we're working both sides at the same time, which is bilateral. On unilateral, if this side is super tight on the front, what it's going to do is it's going to create this crazy imbalance, and then this is going to be
Which we do
really
see a lot.
long, and then this is going to be really short, that's going to be short, and both your back sides are going to be hurting like crazy. And then you're going to be like, but my back hurts, Julie. My back hurts. I don't want you poking me in the pelvis because my back hurts. But here's why. Because there's this tug of war going on with the front side and the back side of us all the time. And so and here's the other thing is we have a psoas minor, but only 40% of us have it. And its job actually is to do posterior tilt. So now you're probably asking me, because I know you are.
What are we asking?
You're asking me why does my back hurt?
Why does my back hurt?
Like what the hell is the posterior tilt? How's that going to help my back? So now you've given me all this anatomy. You've given me the tug of war scenario that's happening. I get it. You showed me this cool little spine guy with the hips and pelvis, which I love. And here's the deal. When you're sitting a lot, here is your pelvis.
Hold steady. There we go. All right.
What do you think is happening there, guys? What is happening? Look at what is being shortened and look at what is being really overly stretched. All of that. I think I just ruined my pelvis.
That's fine.
So the reason why we're telling you this is because back pain can actually, low back pain in general, can be eradicated for a lot of postural stuff. A lot of posture can prevent this pain from happening because of the fact is that most of it is muscular. So if one side is too small or too short and hyperactive, the other side is elongated. Remember that reciprocal inhibition that we talked about. You can't contract two opposing muscle groups at the same time regarding movement. Otherwise, you have two contracting and you have no movement whatsoever. So if one side's tight, the other side's like, arr! And so if these are overstretched, they're going to be crying because they're not getting, they're not in, the body wants homeostasis, right? It wants it to be neutral. It wants it to be balanced, and then there's no balance. And so if there's no balance, hi Mary, if there's no balance going on, then the body doesn't know what to do. And so that's where pain comes out. Remember, we just talked about that on the last show with upper body. So there's this whole pain cycle that goes in because the body's like, I don't know what to do. So how do we change this? How do we change this?
And how do we make a change that we can continue to hold those changes
right.
and maintain that balance?
Right. If you guys have been watching, you know that we're a big proponent of any type of posture and any type of like functional stuff. So remember, if you're sitting a lot and your glutes are overstretched, what you get to do is you get to start reactivating them. And what that means is by you squeezing them, you're sending a signal to the sensory receptors in that muscle and up into your brain like, I'm back here, guys. I'd like to actually work. And so when you start squeezing your glutes from the inside, not your hands. I mean, squeezing somebody else's glutes are great, but you know, it's not going to help you.
It's not going to help you with your posture.
That's why when someone squeezes your glutes, it feels better for a second. But really, in the long run, you got to squeeze your own. And you got to do it from the inside.
But by somebody squeezing your glutes, you become acutely aware of where your glutes are.
That's true.
We do get that glute amnesia. We forget. Our brain forgets where our glute is.
Yeah. And remember, too, there's this thing called ischemia, right? If your body is ischemic, it means it has a lack of blood flow. Yeah. Think about this. When you're squeezing your arm and you squeeze it really, 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 really tight, and then you let go and it goes white for a second, that's ischemic. So that's the lack of blood flow.
You have the whiteness on your arm. Can we see the white?
Yeah. Really? Watch.
Oh, it actually.
Because I'm white, but you can. There's whiter. There is whiter to go. So that's actually what's happening on the inside. So you really are it's this lack of blood flow that's happening, and your body's just like, I don't know what to do. So it just sits in a hold position and it just waits. Meanwhile, the muscles in the front of your leg, your quad, your thigh, that big hip flexor of the psoas, which is attached to your low back, remember? And then these muscles in the front and the side are all like this, just super short. And so it's kind of like if you take a rubber band and you take a rubber band and you just turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it, like you've got this. A regular rubber band, this is your muscle. It should be able to stretch and it should be able to contract. But if you are shortening it and you've got one side that's holding and the other side is just shortening and shortening and shortening and shortening, look at the contractile power that I have now. I can barely move it and it's really not that strong. So if I let this go, it's not going to give me a lot of power. But if I let this go, I got a lot more power to it.
And the inverse to that is if you're overstretched,
you
also have a weakness. So
if you're overstretched for a long period of time, it's like leaving these guys out in the sun for a long time. And then they're just like this. And they don't really have that strength to drop back in. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I'm weird like that with the rubber bands. So how do we make sure that we are truly in posterior tilt and get out of pain. Posterior tilt, again, if I missed it the first couple of times, what it does is it actually sets your pelvis backwards a little bit. It creates space in between your vertebrae, and it helps the discs get lubricated. So it helps to lube up the discs with the synovial fluid. It actually creates a little bit of structure and imbalance, and it actually helps to space out everything, right? And then also in the front, it's contracting these deep core muscles and creating a structure for us as part of our own girdle, our weight belt, so to speak.
Now, we're not saying you got to walk around in full posterior tilt all the time, because then
then you just look like old man pants.
We're just trying to create balance back out of that imbalance of that anterior tilt, going to that posterior tilt, and find a nice balance between the two.
Exactly. So first thing you guys can do is squeeze your glutes. And what I want you to do is, if you're doing it, I want you guys, hey Gustavo, I want you to sit with your feet flat on the floor, and I want you to not put your hands right onto your thighs. I want you to put them right on the top of your thighs, and I want you to squeeze just your glutes, and I don't want you to feel your quads moving at all.
We're watching, go ahead.
And yeah, exactly, we're watching. I can see you. So if you're doing that and you feel a lot of movement happening within your quads, you're quad dominant. And what that means is your thighs are taking over. Those muscles have decided that they are the prime movers of this movement. So what we want is, we want your glutes to work. And if your butt's working, then your quadriceps and your thighs have to let go. Yeah. So that's going to be a huge help for somebody to like just start to get into that position. Yeah. The other thing too is you want to think about pulling your belly button in towards your spine. The minute you pull your belly button in towards your spine, you actually kind of tip your pelvis back.
Have to.
You have to. And I don't want you to round your back. This isn't about like creating more of a crazy posture. It's about sitting up tight, tall, and pulling your belly button in. And if you think about it pulling up and in, like your belt buckle to your belly button, because everybody knows where their belly button is, and everyone has a belt buckle. And so you pull your belt buckle up towards your belly button, and everything drops back. And what that does is it creates your weight belt. Yeah. And that will actually, it's one of the quickest ways you can get out of low back pain. I swear to you. There's a couple of other hip flexor stretches that most people give, where they put their foot behind their back and then they just lean forward. Tuck your butt under. Everything is about tucking your tail under. It's about really pulling from, but not just tucking, pulling up and in. So you're taking your pubic bone and you're pulling it up towards your belly button.
Now, some people have a very limited range of motion because of various different structural problems that are going on, or issues that are going on. And they might have a more limited ability to go into that posterior toe.
True.
Just because of, one big thing is ankylosing spondylitis, or where the bones are, just because of different other issues have come up, have fused or beginning to fuse together, and it's limiting that range of motion. So you got to check yourself. Are you going into posterior tilt? Look in a mirror, or have somebody look at you and see what you're actually doing. Because you might think you're doing it, and you may not be doing it.
A little tip here, guys, is if you are looking in the mirror, you shouldn't lose your height. So if you're dropping down, your knees are bending, you're dropping down into it, you're not hitting posterior tilt. So that's how to get out of back pain. Yeah. Like that in a nutshell, in a 30-minute nutshell, in a long nutshell, I guess, in 2 nuts of a shell, is how to get out of back pain. It's not going to be for every type of back pain.
There are so many
There are
reasons.
way too many types, and we're not diagnosing anything. We're not doing any of that. We're giving anatomy, we're giving bony landmarks, we're giving the basics, right? But for those of us that are sitting on our butts, it's going to help us get off of them and really help the back and hip situation. Because the more we get ourselves into a neutral space, the more the body gets a chance to help itself and get back to where it is.
This should not, if you try this and you feel more pain, and you try it again and do it about 2 or 3 times and you still feel increasing amounts of pain, stop. Don't do this. You may be one of those individuals who this is not for, and you need to do something different, and you can contact us, or we can start to help guide you to find out what's really going on. But yeah, it should feel better, not worse.
Yeah, and if you guys know somebody who's in back pain, who has back pain, if you know somebody who's just like sitting on their butt all the time, pass this along to them. We would love to be able to help them out. If you know anybody that might be interested in getting onto Tissue Talk, have them connect with us. We would love to have, to have more people watching us during the day. And also, if there's anything that you guys want to talk about in particular, let us know, because we're all about it. We're all about it. Next week, we're going to be doing compensatory patterns and kinetic chain, which means up the body and down the body. What's happening in the back usually comes down the joint or goes up the joint. So let's figure out where you are and what's going on. The other thing too, real quick, is if you guys are watching, tomorrow we're going to put a tip into how to balance out your pelvis.
Good.
We're going to throw it into the Facebook Tissue Talk group. Yay! I know, I'm excited too.
Keep staying tuned, because we got new things we're adding all the time.
Yes.
So we got some good stuff coming up next week that we're adding.
Yeah, we got some really good stuff. So each time we're getting a little different, and then pretty soon I'm going to be bringing in some friends. So
I might actually get a haircut at some point.
God, me too. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today, and please leave a comment. Pass it along, tag a couple people if you know, and let us know what you think. We would love any type of feedback. So I hope you guys are doing great, and we will see you next Wednesday at 12:30.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Who's that? What we got?
Oh yeah, turn on your notifications. Don't forget. Don't miss any of these. Thank you, Alan. Okay, bye guys.